Hello everyone, my name is Petru and we are talking about how to choose your first programming language, or maybe how to choose your next programming language if you already have started learning. And I think this is the champion of all questions in regards to programming. This is the question that every beginner asks at some point in his learning journey, because whenever you are wanting to do something, if you are at the beginning, you will struggle a lot in finding how to really begin. And a lot of times it helps if you are working with someone, if that someone tells you exactly what you need to do and you just need to do that. You only need to implement and put into practice. But a lot of times you don't have that person near you. You don't have that someone who's at your help, who comes at your rescue whenever you have questions. And a lot of time you need to do some documenting on your own. So because of that, I totally get it why it is so hard to choose your first programming language, because there are a lot of possibilities, there are a lot of options, and a lot of times as you do more and more research, instead of knowing more and instead of being easier, you find it more overwhelming. You become more confused. And I talked with a lot of people who are at the edge of quitting because they didn't know where to start, because there's so much information on the internet about programming and there are a lot of possibilities, and that vast amount of options makes us feel that we don't want to do this because we don't know where to start. So if you are in that position, if you want to become a successful programmer, if you want to make money by coding, if you want to maybe work remote or just have a very good salary and create apps that people use, then watch this video, because I will talk about how to choose your first programming language, or actually, I will talk more about the mindset behind making the right choice, because I could just tell you, hey, use this programming language and you'll be fine. But the truth is that that won't help you at all, because even if you know what the, let's say, best programming language is, you will still struggle in learning it. So this video will be about learning. I'll talk about how to see the programming languages and how to see programming in general. Now, before we begin, just a little disclaimer: don't Google every language that I'm going to talk about in the video, because you'll end up being more confused. You'll end up being even more overwhelmed. So just sit back, enjoy, and I hope this will be a very useful video for you. And I hope that in a few months from now you will be a programmer, you will come back here and tell me how you did. So I'm very curious about that. So now let's begin. First of all, I've been through this journey myself, and I remember when I was in high school, I was super enthusiastic about starting to learn how to code, because here in Romania you get to learn how to code in high school if you have good grades. We get to choose our major for high school. So I was super enthusiastic when I was starting out. I thought that in a few months I'll be able to create my own apps, I'll be able to build my own video games. And I think this happens a lot with education. You tend to get very enthusiastic about what you're going to learn, and then in reality your expectations are just not fulfilled. And because of that, I got really frustrated. So in school, we were learning a lot about algorithms. We were learning a lot of how to work with numbers, how to solve, like you were given a number and you have to print some message on the screen based on some special property of that number. And I remember at that time, I was hating math, and I had to do a lot of math because that was the nature of the high school I got into, and I was not happy with it, and I was trying to escape from all those mathematical problems. And I thought that computer science would be my escape, but actually it wasn't, because there were a lot of those problems. So then I realized that I need to I need to switch tactics. I need to learn it all by myself, because otherwise I was about to spend maybe 3 years in high school just solving problems with numbers. So I was very unhappy with that. So I started searching on the internet. I started searching how to build my own website. I wanted to be online. I wanted everyone to know about me, because I liked being popular, because I was doing math and I wasn't a popular kid. And I thought by learning how to code and building my own website, I was going to become popular, which I did in the end, but not in high school, but later after I started my first business. But I found out a really cool website with lots of tutorials. They were showing me exactly what I wanted to build. They were showing me exactly how to build my own website. The technology used was PHP, but I didn't understand anything about how PHP worked or how I could build my own website. But the cool stuff was that the guy doing the videos was showing me exactly step by step how to implement my website. So what I did was just sit back on my chair and I started coding. Well, actually it wasn't coding, it was just transcribing from the video on my computer. And at the end, I was very surprised when I saw that my code actually worked. Then I started changing all the names. I started switching from, hey, this is an example, to welcome to Petrus website. I was translating everything to Romanian because that's my native language. And in the end, I was very happy with the result and I showed it to everyone. But then I wanted to build a small game on the website. And I felt very stuck. I didn't even know where to begin. I was looking at the code that I written and I realized that I didn't understand anything. I didn't know how to come up with that code on my own. And the problem with that was that I was just transcribing and I wasn't understanding anything. It was just, hey, this is how you do it. And if I tried to learn to read the code line by line, I realized that I didn't understand what those lines did, or maybe I was understanding 10 or 20%, but I didn't understand the general logic. I didn't understand how to build things. So because of that, I sort of quit and I started being very focused on the problems that I was getting at high school, that I was getting in my computer science class. So for example, I would be receiving a task, and even though I didn't know how to solve it at first, and even though I didn't like working with numbers and understanding the whole point of doing it, I was still working my ass off in order to finish all the tasks. And I started learning in advance because we had that old textbook that we were learning from, and I started reading it in advance and solving the more advanced problems. But the problem with that was that I didn't get to build my first real world application, which was built by me and not by copying some other guy's code, until 4 years later. So I spent 4 years developing my way of thinking and doing algorithms. And those are two strategies that I wouldn't recommend. I don't recommend just learning things in a theoretical manner, working a lot with numbers. And I also don't recommend just transcribing code from some tutorial and building your app right away. So I think that the best way for learning is combining those two strategies. And the reason why I briefly talked about it is that you need to understand the idea of code. There's a part where you need to understand the fundamentals, and then there's a part where you need to start building your own apps and showing your potential employer showing him that you have experience. So before telling you what programming languages you should use, let's talk about how computers work. Because the fact is that computer run on the same principles. Smartphones run on the same principles, and like pretty much every electronical device works based on electricity, and those electricity is used for creating 2 digits. Probably you already heard this, but computers work by using zeros and ones. And that's everything that they know how to do. They know how to work with zeros and ones. And by using multiple zeros and one in a sequence, they build numbers. So inside of your computer, there are only numbers. So when you are watching me on the screen and hearing my sound, in the background there are zeros and ones that your monitor knows how to translate into images, and that your speakers know how to translate into sound. And that is also true with programming languages. So because computers work the same way, programming languages need to be working on the same principles. And a lot of times what happens, or maybe not a lot of times, but every time when you are writing some code, that code gets translated multiple times. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to just to write your own code, because it's just very, very complicated to write zeros and ones. And if you make a mistake and write a 1 instead of a 0, then everything fails. So in order to make it easier for us to write code and to build applications for our computers, the first computer scientists built those translators. So a translator is called a compiler, and you might already have heard about it. And when you write some code, that code is transcribed into zeros and ones. And the funny thing is that even though we are using different programming languages for different purposes, the code gets transcribed in the same programming language, which is called the machine language, and is only consisting of zeros and ones. And the reason why there are multiple programming languages is basically some preference. Some people like writing a thing when they want to print something on the screen. So for example, I want to print well code on the screen. If I prefer using C++, then I will just write cout well code. But if I like writing Python, I will say print well code. And people think that if it's easier to print something in Python, for example, then Python is a superior programming language, which is not the case. As I said, it's just a matter of preference. And in reality, most of the times, the Python code is transcribed or translated or compiled into C or Java code. And basically, it ends up being all the same thing. Now, the reason why people think Python is easier, for example, or the reason why they prefer some language over the other, is that it looks simpler. It looks like the instructions are shorter, and it looks like you need to write a smaller amount of code, which sometimes it is true, but the fact is that most of those people are scared of memorizing all those commands. And I remember when I built my first website in high school, I was scared as well. I was scared that I was that I needed to memorize everything that I written down in order to build my next website, which is actually not the case. Whenever you want to learn how to code, you don't need to memorize a lot of things. And I actually counted when I prepared for this video the amount of instructions that I use daily, and there are somewhere around 20 instructions that I, let's say, need to learn by heart, that I need to memorize. And the good thing is that the good news is that you find all those instructions in the official documentation of your programming language of choice. So actually you don't even need to learn those 20 instructions because you already have them in your documentation. But the thing that you need to learn is how to combine those instructions. This is a very important thing, because in order to build any kind of real world application, you will need to write at least 1,000 or maybe even 2,000 lines of code to build the most basic thing. You will need to write that amount of code, and obviously you can't memorize those 2,000 lines of code, maybe only if you study medicine or something related. And you need to understand how to invent those lines of code and how to combine those 20 instructions that you learn. And here comes into account your logic. Okay, here comes into account how well you develop your logic when it comes to coding. So I will give you an example. Printing something on the screen is super easy, and if you have learned some HTML, you know that for building a static website is also very, very easy. But now let's think about Facebook for a second. Let's think about how this logic comes into place. Let's say a Facebook user wants to delete his account, and this Facebook user was a pretty active one. He used to post a lot of photos, he used to post a lot of comments, he would reply to his friends' comments, and he has lots and lots of data that now Facebook needs to delete. And we need to think now how to delete all this data, because just removing the user might be easy. You just remove it from your database and that's it. But what can you do when you need to also delete all his comments? Maybe that's also easy. You just look for all his comments and delete them. But what about his replies? What about his posts? What about his likes? The likes that he's given? How do you search for all that information? And I hope you are getting my point here. So right now it doesn't even matter what programming language I'm using, but what matters most is my searching strategy. How can I search for all the records tied up to this user? How can I find everything that the user has done? And that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying that you need to develop your logic. And a lot of times, most programs that I'm writing and most of the programs that people are writing are very similar, even though they are written in different languages. And it's funny, because at the point I tried building the same application in two different programming languages, and I ended up with pretty much the same code. Now I experimented that with my clients, and I started with working with them with number problems that I didn't like in high school, even though I didn't press them so hard as I was in my high school. I just wanted to teach them the basic principles, like how to work with numbers and how to build simple things. And then as we progressed, and as we were doing this in C++, at some point we transitioned to Java. And we transitioned to things that are closer to the real world applications. After we did that, what I realized is that my students were learning Java super fast. There wasn't like a transition period when they didn't know how to do one thing or another. They were just searching the documentation and understanding things very fast. And what I realized is that after they build their personal project, after they build their first application, they got jobs for programming languages that they didn't work with. Obviously, they prepared a bit before the interview, like a few hours, but I had lots of clients who worked with Java, for example, and they got hired on a different programming language, and they did very well during the interviews, and the interviewers were very impressed by it. So this was field tested by my clients, and also the same thing happened to me. So when I was at my second internship in the US, when I was an intern for Palantir, I was working with Java. Like that was, I only knew, I think at that point, C++ and Java. Those were the languages that I was most used to. But when I was there, I had to work with JavaScript mostly. And even though I didn't know lots about it, I picked it up real fast, and I think I finished my first task in the first week. It wasn't like build your own application from scratch in my first week, but it was a pretty complex task, and I finished it very fast. So what I wanted to say with this is that you need to focus on developing your logic, which is trainable, so you can learn how to think directly in code. And if you look at the difference between different programming languages, you will see that the code looks pretty much similar. So now let's answer the question how to choose the programming language. And my number one recommendation is to choose it not based on the language, but choose it based on the best teacher that you can learn from. Because you can choose, let's say there exists the best programming language for a beginner. Let's assume that that's the case, that you can have the best programming language, and you find out what the best is. But the problem is that if you have the worst teacher, you still won't be able to learn that language, because you need to understand how to connect all those different concepts, how to put them together and build something more complex. And even if you have the right programming language, you still won't learn how to connect them the right way if you don't have a good teacher. And moreover, you can develop wrong habits by learning things the wrong way, and then you'll have to unlearn them, and then you'll have to waste time for unlearning them and then starting again from scratch. Now let's imagine that you have a very good teacher, a teacher that knows how to explain even the most complicated concepts, but he uses, let's say, a bad programming language, a language that makes you do more work. So even though you are using that programming language, because you are working with the right teacher, because he developed your way of thinking, now you will be able to build your own apps. And even though you might be 10% less productive because of the programming language, and now I'm exaggerating a bit, you will still accomplish your purpose. And what you'll see in the end is that afterwards you can learn a new programming language, and that learning that programming language will become very easy because you already understood the principles. So you need to think about your purpose. You need to think about the purpose why you are learning how to code. And for most people, this purpose is to ace their coding interviews. So they want to just get a job as a programmer. And in order to do that, you need to show that interviewer that you are thinking, that you have a well-developed logic. And not every teacher knows how to develop your logic. Not every teacher knows how to teach you to learn, because you need to learn how to learn. In computer science, in coding, there are new technologies coming up every year. There are new technologies that you will need to learn, and new techniques. And as you advance in your career, or as you become more senior in your job, you will be given more difficult tasks. And most employers don't want someone who does the easy tasks, because the easy tasks are done in a fast way and they don't bring much value to a company. But most employers want and need someone who can also solve the difficult task, and someone who knows how to think on his own, and who knows how to dissect a problem. So for doing that, you really need a good teacher who knows how to develop your logic and who will make you be independent. Because once you are hired, people won't have the patience of staying with you and teaching you every small thing that you need to do, and they have the expectation from you to figure some things out on your own. So this is what you need to show during an interview. So during a coding interview, you need to show that you have your logic on point, that you can solve problems that you never ever solved before. And in order to do this, the programming language is not that important. So what I did, and I found it was most successful when I was in high school, is to find the teacher with the best results, the teacher who was able to show me how to be independent and how to solve more and more difficult problems. And then I went with whatever programming language he used. In my case, it was C++, and I don't regret it, because I was able then, after high school, to land some very good jobs. I landed internships with Google, with Facebook, and because of my way of thinking, I was able to ace those interviews and to do really well in my internships as well. So those are my opinions in regards to coding, in regards to choosing your first programming language. And if you want to experience that firsthand, we prepared a free program for you where you can register for free. You go on wellcode.com and you create a free account, and there what you'll find is that we are applying the same principles that I talked about. You'll find out how to build your first program on your own, how to build your first code. You will learn how to think in a logical way about instructions, and we will take you step by step through the journey of learning how to code, and also you will get all the help possible from us. So it's a very interactive program. Whenever you have questions, we will be there to answer those questions for you. So go on wellcode.com, create a free account, and I'll see you in the program. So don't hesitate to ask all your questions there, because I will reply to you. So I wish you good luck. I'll see you on Wellcode, and I can't wait to help you learn how to code.